Hey everyone, this is Kirsten Hall again with Pointe Publishing. Today we are doing another introduction interview with Mr. Dean Ulland. He is a history professor and he is putting together an awesome book. I can't say a whole lot about it because, it's top secret, but it should be out either the end of this year, 2020, or early 2021. I know it's a big project coming in, so we'll see on the timing of it all, but it should be pretty exciting. But as you guys may have known, if you've been watching our introduction interviews that we're doing, I have everyone pick out 5 or 6 questions for our scripted reality show. So I have us 5 questions here ready to go, and we will start talking. All right, Dean, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello, good afternoon on this warm and sunny Minnesota June day.
Oh gosh, no kidding. Is it as warm as it was yesterday?
No, it isn't. I also, by the way, have many more trees laying flat on my lawn than I did yesterday. But that's the way it goes sometimes in Minnesota. So.
Yeah, we were watching the trees just bend, and we're like, oh. Anyway, all right, so off we go. Well, first of all, tell us about yourself and your background. Who are you?
Okay, my name is, as you've mentioned, Dean Ulland. I've lived in the Corning area on a farm for almost all of my life. I farmed for about 30 years and then made a career move and went back to graduate school and acquired my master's degree in history and joined the faculty at Riverland in 2001 and retired last year. So I taught there for about 18 years, taught some political science as well. And so I'm kind of a person of 2 careers. And I think that's kind of the best of our worlds.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love history and love the farm. So there you go.
And you live in a beautiful area. And
Yes.
yeah, so perfect. All right, second question, your professional qualifications and your research interests.
Okay. Boy, you can really get me going when you ask that. Well, my qualifications, obviously, I have a master's degree from Minnesota State in Mankato. I participate in history conferences across the Midwest and Canada. In fact, I was at a conference in Canada last year. I continue to research in the areas of especially World War I. That particular era interests me a lot. I like also immigration history and sort of local and Minnesota history. Try and put all of those together. I also, by the way, like European and especially English history from the Victorian period through World War I. So those are kind of my broad research interest. Almost everything that I do would fall into one of those categories. So I continue to, I never stop reading and researching. I do that, I believe, virtually every day at some point during the day. I was honored when my thesis was nominated for a I'm tooting my horn here a little bit, but a rather prestigious award from the Midwest Association of Graduate Schools. I did not receive the award, but it was still a great honor to be nominated for it. And so that would probably be a good look at my qualifications, I suppose.
Well, you're definitely a lot more qualified than I would be to be writing anything about history. I can't remember 10 minutes ago. So,
Can I say that when I write, I picture 2 or 3 of my professors looking over my shoulder, and I continually tell myself, what if, ask myself, what if one of them would pick this up? This better be the best I've got. So it may not be as good as other people expect, but I always feel as though I'm writing to some extent for some of my professors that I admire a great deal. So.
You always put out the best. There's no doubt about that. Definitely. All right. Tell us about your career at Riverland.
Well, I was very fortunate at the exact time when I finished my graduate work. Riverland was looking for a fill-in person for another one of the faculty that was on sabbatical, and I was hired to take that slot, and I kind of never looked back. And a few years into teaching history, they asked me to take over some of the political science as well, and I do have qualifications to teach that. And so I did all of that, and I had a really wonderful career. I can't say enough good things about Riverland and the people there. So I was there for about, as I said, 18 years.
Okay. Well, perfect. Matter of fact, Riverland does have a lovely campus. I have not seen their Owatonna or Albert Lee campuses, but Austin's campus is beautiful, and I've had one child go there, and it's laid back, well put together, well maintained. So
I will say that I was a Riverland student myself about half a century ago, or even a little more. And I pictured you can imagine my surprise the semester I was assigned to teach a class in my old history instructor's room at Riverland, and it was sort of a eerie feeling, but I did it and I enjoyed it. So.
Well, very cool. Well, you had good vibes, good positive energy going in there, although it may have been a little weird. All right. All right, so don't tell us the name of the book quite yet, but can you give us your 30-second or maybe 2-minute elevator speech about what it's about?
Okay, this book is sort of the sum total of the work I've done for quite a few years, and it takes the business of World War I and examines the way it affected people's lives here. It's not just about, although I do introduce the events of the war and talk about some battles and that sort of thing, but I'm really interested in how it affected a farmer or someone who is trying to raise their family, do their work with limited help. In other words, how it affected the daily lives of the people here. And I've divided it into quite a few different chapters concerning volunteer activities, the way young men were drafted, how they were trained, and of course, perhaps my favorite part of it, and I like a little controversy and that sort of thing, and there was a lot of, the issue of disloyalty was very important and a big issue in 1917 and 1918. People were sometimes suspicious of their neighbors. If they weren't doing enough, sometimes they would report them and that sort of thing. And that sort of interests me a lot. And I've taken a kind of a good look at that. I used as sources local newspapers. I have many letters, diaries, and memoirs. And so there are a lot of primary source material that I use in the book.
Kind of how humans relate to each other in a certain time period or a specific thing in history, and how people relate to themselves.
This had never happened in anyone's living memory. There were still a few people that could remember the Civil War, but not many. Mm-hmm. And this was brand new to people, and you can imagine that when they see the young men by the thousands being shipped off, and people were scared and worried, and so they, if you questioned the war, it wouldn't necessarily mean you didn't support it, but even if you questioned it a little bit, sometimes people looked at you very suspiciously, and that sort of. Can I say one more thing? There's a complete chapter that was a really sort of odd episode in the middle of all this, having to do with Blooming Prairie and the saloon keepers there, and the way that they sold their liquor throughout southern Minnesota. And that got to be very, very controversial, to the point where the state of Minnesota literally sent a group of guardsmen down and kind of invaded Blooming Prairie. So
Oh, wow.
that's an interesting part of the book as well, too. That's really one of my favorite parts to talk about that.
Little did you know. So
Yeah,
yeah, there is definitely a lot of to peel back the layers of time and beliefs and uh, the untruths, you know, versus what really happened versus what people tell through the generations and over time.
sure. It's
Yeah.
cool. And I try to I give a lot of names as examples, and that's sort of not in a critical sense, but if you're a young man who asked to be exempt from the draft and were denied that exemption, and you went off to and became a great hero, I mention that sort of thing. They're very human and personal interests in this to me. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
try my best to display that.
Well, very cool. Like I said, I'm looking forward to reading it. Um, yeah, you know, I'm probably not as big as of a history buff as you, but I'm very much into it, and I'm looking forward to reading it. All right. Well, now I'm going to ask you, why did you choose to write about this?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, on my shelves, I guess I really can't show them to you right now. I have a 10-volume history of World War I, the Great War. That was my great grandpa's, and it belonged to my father for many years. And I was always fascinated with that as a young person, and I would frequently page through these volumes of history. And now I'm very proud to say that I'm currently the steward of those books until the next generation comes along. And so perhaps that inspired my interest in the war. One of my grandmothers grew up in England and emigrated to America in 1920. And one of the stories that she would occasionally tell was as a young girl, being in close proximity to bombing raids by German Zeppelins, and recalling seeing the Zeppelins and hearing the bombs explode. And perhaps that's one of the reasons that I was inspired to learn more about World War I. But I suspect there are a variety of different reasons. Who knows exactly why any of us are interested in what we're interested in? But it just happens that that era in history holds a great fascination to me. We've traveled with another couple. Harriet and I have spent quite a lot of time on the battlefields in France, and we went journeyed to Sarajevo, Bosnia, memorable trip 2 years ago, and actually saw the spot where the assassination occurred that started the war. And so all of these sort of things feed together into my interest.
And you just think about where the world has been and come from over the last 100 years. I mean, the century. I mean, how much has happened?
Yes.
And you know, we're kind of, I don't want to say cloistered in our one immediate here and now, but I mean all over the world. So fascinating. All right, so the next one up, well, okay, your next question here is travel and research at World War I sites.
Oh, sir. I guess I jumped the gun a little on that, but I believe strongly in travel as a educational and broadening experience for everyone. And 2 years ago, as I said, Harriet and I and two close friends of ours journeyed to Bosnia and into Serbia, and then into Austria, and looked at some of the World War I sites. And it brings a sort of immediacy to the thing that you can't, you can learn a lot reading, but it's not quite like being there. The other thing that we did a few years ago was journey to some of the battlefields in France. We flew to Paris and rented a car and drove in through northeastern France and into Belgium. The people we were traveling with, the gentleman's grandfather had actually been in some of the battles, and so we had a memorable day looking at sites where he'd been and actually where he'd been wounded and that sort of thing. And it's an eye-opening experience. It's books, as I said, are great, but being there it's even better. So
Yeah, no kidding. Um, all right, and your last thing here, your hobby of collecting rare books.
yes, I feed. I'm tripping over my tongue here. Literally from the time I could start to read, I've collected books. I have books on my shelves that are on me that I've had for a long time. And I these days, when I have more time and perhaps a little more disposable income, I like to collect first editions of works that by people that I'm familiar with, mainly history books. I love old books. For some reason, I just have a fascination with them, and I love old documents. And so I have a library full of both. And some days I feel as though I have more than I know what to do with, but it keeps coming. But yes, that is my my main hobby is collecting and trying to catalog some of the rare books in my collection. So.
Well, as you know, we've talked before. I will have to share with you. I'll when I have the time, I will take pictures, show you some of the books that I have. One that I told you was really old, about 200 plus years old, I guess.
Oh, that is
Is
really.
Yeah, it's a little pocket almanac. No, excuse me, little pocket. I just lost maps. You know, it's about that thick,
Yes.
and it's got the 13 states and then the rest of the United States
Wow.
open. Yeah, but again, like I've said before, you know, you open it and that binding with the glue and it cracks and you're like, oh, I don't want to ruin it. You know, you just put it up high and then you don't touch it.
Sure.
But and you were mentioning you've got Norwegian.
Yes, actually, it seems as though I'm descended from a long line of readers, and I have quite a few books in Norwegian that were my great grandparents and their families, and I also have some of their old Norwegian language newspapers and that sort of thing. And I have no idea what they're saying in there, but it's kind of great fun to look through them and imagine that my great grandparents held them in their hands at
Mm-hmm.
one point. And so all of that it's fun for me. It's something that I enjoy, and I'm hoping that somebody in my family will enjoy it too, so they can kind of be the stewards of it after I'm not anymore. So.
Yeah. Anything else you would like to say to everyone before we sign off?
Well, no, I'm certainly hoping that as I send this book off to the editors and what have you in the next few days, I'm hoping that it will come out and people will be interested in it, and in 6 or 8 months or whenever that happens. Just one quick note. There's going to be an article in the next Moore County Historical Society newsletter about the pandemic, the influenza epidemic of 1918 that I'm working on
Okay.
as well. So you might want to take a look at that sometime.
Well, I will certainly, you send me the link and I will push it all over the place. It'll be on your webpage and on the Facebooks and Twitters and Instagrams and all that good stuff. But definitely there'll be some readership to that. And then, of course, in about 6 or 8 months, well, even prior to that, we'll start getting people plugged into the book that's coming out. So anyway, all right. So I thank you everyone out in YouTube world for joining us for this introduction interview with Mr. Dean Ulland. Like I said, his book should be out either late 2020 or early 2021. If any of you guys follow this, oh, definitely hit the subscribe button wherever that happens to be. But follow all of the posts that I do. I will be putting out teasers along the way and getting you guys all buzzed up and ready for his book release here in about 6 to 8 months. Oh my gosh, it's June. Anyway, all right, well, who knew? All right, well, you guys all have a fabulous day in your neighborhood, and we will chat with you later. Bye.